In the dead of night, just before 3 a.m. on January 19th, 2026, American politics changed forever. 67 senators, including 19 from the Republican Party, voted to officially rebuke their president. The reason? Claims that he directed the FBI to create fake criminal charges against his political enemies. This has never happened before in modern America. The White House went completely silent. No press releases, no updates. For 7 full hours, nobody said a word. Staff members were seen carrying boxes out of their offices. Something was very wrong. When Mitch McConnell, a man who stood by Donald Trump during 2 impeachment trials, gets up in the middle of the night and calls a Republican president a tyrant, things have gone too far. If you want to know the full story, stay with me, because what I'm about to share has not been widely reported yet, and it will change the way you see everything happening in Washington right now. Let me start with some background the big news networks aren't giving you. The last time something even close to this happened was in August 1974. That's when Richard Nixon stepped down before senators could remove him from office. Law professors from top universities are quietly telling journalists that what's unfolding now makes Watergate look small by comparison. We're talking about a sitting president allegedly recorded on tape telling federal agents to invent crimes against Americans whose only mistake was belonging to the other political party. Here's how the last 2 days played out. On January 17th, a veteran intelligence worker, someone who had been doing this job for 17 years, made the hardest choice of their career. People close to this person say they couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. They knew going public could destroy their job, but staying quiet felt like helping to destroy democracy itself. The next day, January 18th, senators on the Intelligence Committee gathered in a locked room to hear a 47-minute audio recording. 4 of them later said it was the most disturbing thing they'd heard in their entire time serving the public. Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma is a strong conservative. He voted to clear Trump both times before. After listening to this tape, he walked out looking shaken. Witnesses say he sat quietly for several minutes. Then he said he needed to call his wife before making any statement. And then there's Mitch McConnell. This man has survived every political storm. He blocked Obama's Supreme Court pick. He backed Trump through every scandal. When someone like that breaks away at 2:30 in the morning, the entire game has changed. So what's actually on this recording? What words were so damaging that 19 Republican senators chose to go against their own president, a move many are calling career suicide? Let me break it down piece by piece. 4 senators who listened to the full 47 minutes say what they heard was crystal clear. This wasn't normal political strategy. This was a criminal plan being discussed in real time with the full power of the presidency behind it. Here's what sources say is on the tape minute by minute, because the details are truly frightening. The recording supposedly starts at 3:12 in the afternoon on January 3rd, 2026. It was supposed to be a regular national security meeting in the White House Situation Room. In the first 12 minutes, sources say you can clearly hear the president's voice. He names 3 Democratic governors directly. He describes them as dangers that must be stopped before the 2026 midterm elections. According to senators who heard it, the language is not unclear. This wasn't about investigating real crimes. This was about inventing crimes where none existed. One senator told NBC News privately that the president said the exact words, "Plant evidence if you have to." This was said while discussing how to build cases against these governors. Another senator said the recording includes detailed instructions about what kind of charges would hurt them most politically. Financial corruption was mentioned as the best option because, quote, "everyone will believe a politician is corrupt." The timing was specific. Arrests had to happen by March 15th, 2026, exactly 2 weeks before important primary deadlines in key states. From minute 12 to minute 28, the recording allegedly moves to media planning. Multiple sources confirm the president talked about working with friendly news outlets to make sure the fake charges got huge attention. There are mentions of specific TV personalities who would be told in advance. There's talk of having supporters ready to go on air within minutes of the arrests. One especially damaging part allegedly includes the president saying, "We control the story before the truth even gets started." Legal experts say this shows clear awareness of guilt. It proves he knew what was being planned was based on lies. The last 19 minutes of the recording from minute 28 to the end contain what senators describe as direct threats against federal officials who might refuse to cooperate. According to sources, the FBI director is mentioned by name. The language suggests that anyone who doesn't obey will be immediately fired and possibly investigated themselves. The attorney general got similar treatment. One senator who heard the tape said the president made it absolutely clear this was not a suggestion. The exact words allegedly used were, "This is not a request. This is an order. And anyone who isn't on board needs to understand what happens to people who aren't loyal." Senator Angus King from Maine said that in 50 years of watching American politics, he's never seen such a clear case of power abuse. King stressed that unlike other controversies where people could debate what was meant, this recording removes any doubt. The words are clear, the orders are direct, the criminal intent is obvious. Legal scholars are already comparing this to the Nixon tapes. Professor Lawrence Tribe from Harvard Law School told CNN that Nixon's tapes showed a president trying to hide crimes others committed. These recordings, if real as described, allegedly show a president actively ordering new crimes against innocent Americans purely for political gain. Former federal prosecutors say this is textbook abuse of power and possibly illegal under federal law that bans violating people's rights while acting as a government official. If this is shocking you, like it's shocking me, leave a comment right now. But what I'm about to tell you next is even more stunning, because it's about what happened when senators actually heard this recording themselves. The scene in the Senate chamber on the night of January 19th, going into early January 20th, was unlike anything seen in modern times. Reporters who were there described a feeling of real fear mixed with historic weight. This wasn't typical political drama. These were elected leaders dealing with a constitutional crisis in real time, knowing their votes would define their place in history and maybe the country's future. At 11:40 p.m., Majority Leader John Thune tried to use a technical move to kill the condemnation vote before it could happen. Normally, this would have worked easily with Republicans controlling the Senate, but these weren't normal times. In a moment that stunned everyone watching, 12 Republican senators joined all 47 Democrats and both independents to reject Thune's move. The vote was 61-39. The chamber went eerily quiet as everyone understood what just happened. A big group of Republicans was openly going against their party leadership on one of the most important votes in Senate history. C-SPAN cameras captured incredible moments during the hours that followed. Senators sat at their desks, many with heads bowed as if praying. Others stared at the ceiling or closed their eyes completely. Susan Collins from Maine was seen covering her mouth, seemingly fighting tears. Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, usually one of the loudest members, sat in total silence, staring forward. The only sounds were the air system humming and occasional paper shuffling. Staff members along the walls, reporters noted several were openly crying. Then at 2:31 in the morning, Mitch McConnell stood up to speak. The former majority leader, now 83 years old, walked slowly to the center. Reporters said you could have heard a pin drop. McConnell has been in the Senate for 38 years. He's lived through impeachment trials, government shutdowns, and every kind of political crisis. He built his entire reputation on party loyalty and smart political moves. What he said next will be remembered as one of the most important moments in modern Senate history. McConnell's voice was calm but serious. He talked about his decades defending the president's constitutional powers against Congress trying to overstep. He talked about respecting the division of government branches and letting presidents have wide freedom in doing their job. And then he said the words that sent shockwaves through the room. He said, "What's on this recording isn't executive authority." He said it's not political hardball. He said it's not even abuse of power in the normal sense. He used the word tyranny. When Mitch McConnell calls a Republican president's actions tyranny, the whole foundation of party politics breaks apart. Multiple senators gasped out loud. Susan Collins began openly crying. Senator Mitt Romney from Utah, his face drained of color, slowly nodded in agreement. Even some Democratic senators looked stunned, not by what McConnell said, but by the fact he was saying it at all. This was the ultimate proof their concerns were real. If McConnell was willing to cross this line, the evidence must be absolutely solid. The roll call vote started at 2:47 in the morning. The Senate clerk called each name one by one in alphabetical order. When Republican senators who had stood by Trump through everything before voted aye, the weight of the moment was clear. Senator John Cornyn from Texas, aye. Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa, aye. Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa, who at 92 is the oldest senator and had never voted against a Republican president, aye. Each Republican yes vote hit like a hammer. When the final count was announced, 67-33, there was no cheering, no clapping, no celebration from either side, just silence and the sound of senators gathering their papers to leave. Political analysts watching from home knew immediately that American politics had just crossed a line it might never come back from. Hit that like button if you're as shocked as I am, because what happened next will completely blow your mind. The silence from the White House after the vote was deafening and unprecedented. When reporters showed up at the White House gates at 7 a.m. on January 20th, they saw something veteran journalists say they've never seen in decades of covering presidents. Absolutely no one would speak, even off the record. The press secretary's phone went to voicemail. The communications director didn't respond to texts or emails. The normal activity that happens in every White House, no matter which party, was replaced with what one reporter called a funeral atmosphere. Inside sources who talked to Politico anonymously painted a picture of total chaos behind closed doors. Staff members were allegedly seen carrying boxes of personal items out of the West Wing as early as 6:30 a.m. One official told reporters the feeling inside was like everyone waiting for an explosion, but nobody knew when it would happen or how bad it would be. Multiple staffers reportedly started reaching out to job recruiters and former colleagues, quietly looking for exit plans while trying to stay under the radar. The silence lasted exactly 7 hours and 16 minutes. Then at 9:43 in the morning, Donald Trump broke his silence with posts on Truth Social that legal experts immediately said could create more criminal problems for him. The first post called the condemnation vote a traitorous attack organized by what he called a conspiracy of Democrats, weak Republicans, and deep state operatives. The second post specifically named Mitch McConnell, calling him a fossil who betrayed the Republican Party and suggesting McConnell himself should be investigated for corruption. But it was the third and fourth posts that caused immediate alarm among legal analysts. Trump explicitly threatened that every Republican senator who voted for the condemnation would face primary challenges funded directly by his political operation. He named several senators directly and said they would learn what happens to traitors. Former federal prosecutors told MSNBC these posts could be witness intimidation and obstruction of congressional proceedings, potentially adding new criminal exposure on top of what's already alleged in the recording. The financial markets reacted with immediate panic. When trading opened on January 20th, the Dow Jones dropped 847 points in just the first hour, the biggest single-hour drop in over 2 years. Treasury yields spiked to levels not seen since the debt ceiling crisis. The U.S. dollar weakened against every major currency, hitting its lowest level in 6 months against the euro. Currency traders told Bloomberg that international investors were genuinely questioning the stability of American democracy for the first time in modern memory. Major corporations began making emergency decisions about political involvement. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, traditionally one of the most reliable Republican allies, issued a statement calling for a thorough, transparent investigation. Companies, including several Fortune 100 corporations, announced immediate suspension of all political donations until things became clearer. CEOs who had attended fundraisers and taken photos with the president began quietly deleting their social media posts. The international reaction was swift and showed just how badly America's reputation has been damaged. NATO allies issued carefully worded statements expressing deep concern about stability within the alliance. The British Prime Minister called for calm and respect for constitutional processes, while privately telling aides, according to leaks, that Britain needed backup plans if American democracy actually collapsed. Germany's chancellor noted publicly that the entire world was watching to see whether American institutions could survive this unprecedented test. Even America's enemies weighed in, though with barely hidden pleasure. Russian state media spent hours covering what they called the inevitable collapse of American democracy from within. Chinese state outlets ran extensive analysis suggesting the U.S. had lost any moral right to lecture other countries about government and human rights. Iranian media called it proof that Western democracy was fundamentally broken and unstable. Perhaps most significantly, the Pentagon felt it needed to offer reassurances that sent a chill through constitutional experts. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Charles Q. Brown privately assured congressional leaders, according to multiple sources, that the U.S. military remains committed to the Constitution and will not participate in any unconstitutional actions. In normal times, such a statement would be routine and unremarkable. But the fact that military leadership felt they needed to say this at all shows just how serious the crisis has become. If this is blowing your mind, hit that like button right now and share this video. What comes next gets even more intense. We need to step back for a moment and understand what's actually at stake here, because this goes far deeper than just one president or one scandal. What we're witnessing is a fundamental test of whether the American constitutional system can survive a direct attack from within. The separation of powers the founders created was built on an assumption that each branch of government would protect its own authority and check the others. But what happens when a president decides the law enforcement system exists only to serve his personal political interests instead of the Constitution? Let me put this in historical context so you understand just how unprecedented this moment truly is. When Richard Nixon was caught on tape discussing the Watergate cover-up, he was trying to hide crimes other people had committed. He was obstructing justice, absolutely, but he was reacting to things that had already happened. What these recordings allegedly reveal is something completely different. This is a president proactively ordering federal law enforcement to commit new crimes against American citizens who have done nothing wrong except belong to the opposing political party. The Clinton impeachment in 1998 was about lying under oath regarding a personal affair. Serious, yes, but it didn't threaten the basic structure of the republic. Trump's first impeachment in 2019 involved Ukraine and claims of seeking foreign interference. His second impeachment in 2021 followed the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Both times, Senate Republicans provided enough votes to clear him, arguing the evidence wasn't strong enough or that voters should decide Trump's fate at the ballot box. But this time is different. And 19 Republican senators recognized that difference at 2:47 in the morning. When you order law enforcement to create fake evidence, you're not exercising executive authority. You're not playing hardball politics. You're trying to transform a democratic republic into an authoritarian system where the law becomes a weapon used against enemies instead of a neutral standard applied equally to everyone. Constitutional scholars are asking deeper questions about how we got here. This didn't happen overnight. Every rule that gets broken makes it easier to break the next one. Every line that gets crossed without consequences makes the next violation more likely. Political scientists who study authoritarianism point out that democracies rarely die in dramatic coups. They erode slowly as leaders test boundaries, face no accountability, and then push further. Each small step seems manageable by itself, but the total effect is the complete destruction of democratic institutions. The psychological patterns of authoritarian leadership follow predictable paths. Demand total loyalty. treat any disagreement as betrayal, use state power against perceived enemies, undermine trust in any institution that might provide accountability, attack the press, delegitimize the courts, fire anyone in your own administration who shows independence. The playbook is well documented from dozens of countries that have slid from democracy into authoritarianism over the past century. Here's the question that should terrify every American, regardless of party. If a president can order the FBI to make up evidence against political opponents and face no consequences, what stops every future president from doing the same thing? If this becomes normal, if accountability fails, then the rule of law becomes meaningless. We would no longer be a nation where justice is blind. We would be a nation where the powerful can use the state against anyone who challenges them. And the only protection would be political connections rather than innocence under law. The implications go far beyond America's borders. Authoritarian leaders around the world are watching closely. If American democracy can't hold its own leaders accountable, what moral authority does America have to criticize China's treatment of dissidents or Russia's persecution of opposition figures? Here's what happens next, and I want you to pay very close attention because the next 72 hours will likely determine the path of American democracy for generations to come. On January 22nd, the House Judiciary Committee holds emergency hearings with constitutional scholars and former Justice Department officials. Chairman Jim Jordan will face enormous pressure from his own party members who are privately expressing concerns about the allegations. On January 23rd, the Senate Intelligence Committee is scheduled to release a partially redacted transcript of the 47-minute recording. Legal experts expect the redactions to protect classified information, but the core content will be made public. The Department of Justice faces an impossible decision. Does the Attorney General appoint a special counsel to investigate a sitting president based on evidence that allegedly includes the president's own voice-ordering crimes? If yes, we enter completely uncharted constitutional territory. If no, the appearance of a cover-up could trigger a legitimacy crisis that makes Watergate look minor by comparison. Sources tell me that decision could come as early as January 25th. But here's what almost no one is talking about. Multiple sources indicate additional recordings may exist, potentially including conversations between the president and the FBI director, between the president and the attorney general, and possibly even recordings of follow-up meetings where carrying out the plan was discussed. If those recordings surface in the next week, the political calculation changes entirely. There are also quiet discussions happening behind closed doors about the 25th Amendment. Does the cabinet have the courage to declare the president unable to perform his duties? Historically, the answer would be no. But these are not historical times. Here's what's at stake. If there are no consequences for ordering federal law enforcement to fabricate evidence against American citizens, then we've set a precedent that will haunt this country forever. Every future president will know that loyalty beats law, that power protects itself, and that the Constitution is just a piece of paper that can be ignored when politically convenient. Subscribe to this channel right now because I'll be updating you the moment any new information breaks. Share this video with everyone you know because this information needs to reach as many people as possible. Comment below with your prediction about what happens next. Turn on your notification bell because breaking news could drop at any moment. I have sources inside the Senate feeding me information in real time. The next 48 hours will be absolutely explosive. This is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning.